oh, you know what? I was all ready to move on to the next topic. And I remember we didn't finish the last one. So let me pull up where we left off before. So that would be truck list w22.xlsm. Okay, so we had issues. So we installed Selenium on this computer, and I was having trouble clicking the button. And I thought, I don't know what's wrong with it. So I actually came in early the next morning. I came in early yesterday morning. Said, all right, I got a few hours before there's any classes in here. I'm going to figure out what the trouble is. And the code worked on the first time. So I don't know if it was rebooting the machine. I don't even know if the machine rebooted, or if it was just restarting Excel. But I'm hopeful. There's a handful of folks here in class that had the same problem. So I'm just going to try to run this again and see what happens. And hopefully it still works. In fact, maybe I'll step through it. So let me go ahead and just put a breakpoint here. And I guess I want my subrunner. It's opened up Chrome over here. That's good. Make it a little bit smaller. And then I'll just advance with F8. So it's got that page. You're going to be putting a value into that cell. So using send keys. Remember here, just as review, what we're saying is here that we're making bot equal to a brand new WebDriver object. That's what we installed when we installed Selenium Basic. And now we're calling the start method, telling it to start Chrome. That's what opened up the Chrome window. Get is going to open up that initial page. And now here we're setting an element, another object, equal to, looking at bot, which is going to be a reference to our browser over here. We're calling find element by name. It's finding something called DOT. And that's going to bind it. It's going to bind this object onto that part of the web page, that object on the web page. Then we're going to call the send keys method to send whatever is in column E of whichever row we're on, which is going to be the Department of Transportation number. Now we're going to try to find the submit button. And now we're going to try to click on that submit button. And that submits and goes through just as we're expecting. Now, is there anyone who is having the trouble, who's following along, who is having the trouble on Monday, who is still having the trouble? And the trouble being that you click and it doesn't have an error, but it doesn't actually click. Is there anyone who was having the trouble on Monday that it's working fine for them now? Okay, so we have at least one person who's reporting the same experience that I had. Now, if we were running through this quickly, we would want this to pause until we actually got to that next page. So we're already there, so that pause isn't really doing anything. Okay, so now we're looking for, did we get to this part in class? Oh, yeah, I'm trying to click on this link. And we found out that that's going to be the first one that has this class on it. And so we are finding that. And I just was saying if there was an error, let's stop. There was no error. And this is the one. I think this is okay. You're saying this is the problem. Find element by tag A. You're saying I need to say set element. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click it. I'm going to click it directly. So this should say, all right, whatever element that was, which is where it's found the first link. But let's just take a look real quick at it. Inspect. So what we're finding when we look for that is the TD class. I'm going to go ahead and separate this out so it's going to make it a little bit bigger. All right, and then let's identify what we're looking for. So I'll choose my little finder here. I'll point at this. Okay. So come back to our code. So what we're saying here is that we want to find the element that has the class middle TDMFSA, whatever that says. And we're going to find that here. So this has a class of that. We are trying to find that, and we're binding elem onto that. And so that's going to give me this TD tag. So at this point, our elem is bound onto that tag. Now, I need to click this anchor tag that's inside of it. And so from that elem tag, I'm going to say find elements by A, and I could set elem equal to this and then click elem, or I could just say, if I'm confident that it's there, I could just say, find me the first anchor tag and then click it. So that's going to find it by the tag, and the tag here is A. It'll find that, it will click on this, and that should then advance my code. Ooh. So hopefully, when I execute that, it's going to take me to this next page. And this is then what has the data. The actual piece of data that I'm interested in is that telephone number right there. Okay, I know I went through that kind of quick. Just show me on a scale of 0 to 5 how comfortable you are with where we are. 5, 5, 4s, and 5s. Okay, I'm not sure I'm a 5 on this today, but excellent. Thank you. All right, so now again, is this a question or are you still voting? So elems is, so let's look at, so elems is a set of web elements, whereas elem is just a single element. So some of these are going to return multiple. If it says find element by something, it's returning just one, either the only one or the first one that it finds. If it's find elems, it's going to find all of the elements on that web page that meet that criteria. And so that would let you iterate across. And so here I was using elems and looking at the first one because I was kind of taking a stab at the dark as to why it wasn't working for me before, and I still don't know the answer. But as is sometimes the case, restart Excel and everything's working okay. All right, so again, when I click on this, as soon as the click event is dispatched to the web page, my code is done doing that. It's going to move on. So I'm going to do something here to tell it to slow down. Don't just keep running, because I've got to wait until my code reaches, or until that page is loaded. And so in this case, I'm going to search until my URL has search details in it. So the last page said search results. My next page is going to say search details. So I'm going to wait until that page is here. And again, if I'm just stepping through line by line, this loop, that doesn't matter. But when I set it off to run, it'll start to try to process this page before the page has arrived. So that's what this loop is doing. All right. So now I got to figure out how to go about getting this. So let me just start off by kind of right-clicking this and saying, all right, maybe there's something special about the way this thing is marked. And this is going to be a middle TDFMSCA, and it looks like there's lots of middle TDFMCA classes. So I don't see myself going at it for the class. And the truth is, I could get my set of all of these elements and then loop through those elements and kind of look for the one that has the data that I'm after. But I'm going to introduce to you a new tool, actually a tool that I wrote that has several features in it that make parsing HTML easier. You remember the day that we had when we were parsing text? It was all about using the in-string function to go find the data. This does those same kind of tools, but it kind of makes them easier to consume, especially when working with web pages. And so that was the other file that we downloaded at the beginning of class. Let's just go and take a look at it. So controlling Chrome, there's a parser.cls. A CLS is a definition of a class. It turns out we can make our own classes in VBA. We're not going to see how to do that in this course, but it's possible, and that's what this is. And so we're just going to import that file, and that will give us a new class that we can make an instance of. Okay, so I'm gonna stop this code here. In fact, I think I'm gonna run it one more time and see if got to stop up here. Let me get rid of this one and see if it just gets to that page with a full straight run, and hopefully we'll hit this stop here at the end. So it looks like it navigated to that part successfully. Okay, good. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable about that. So now let's go ahead and bring in that parser class. So I've downloaded that file. It's just in my downloads. And my code is not running. Make sure I've stocked my code. And I'm just going to choose File, Import, and I'm going to go find that parser.cls file. So I'm looking Downloads, and here's parser.cls. And that will bring in now this group called class modules, and parser is in here. We could, if you really wanted to, you could come and look at this code, and you could come and edit this code or change it or add features to it. I'm going to show you a few of the tools in here, but you don't really need to look at this code to be able to use it. We'll see how to use it here. Did everyone get that imported okay? Let me try it this way. Does anyone need help getting that imported? Yeah, just real quick, the process, let me zoom in. To import is File, File, Import File, and then I'm going to go look for that file, which is in my downloads. Oh, thank you. We're definitely importing, and I gotta zoom out to find out where I am. Oh, it looks like it closed anyway. Okay, zoom in, try it again. File, File, Import File. I've navigated to where the file is, parser.cls. I just click it, say OK, or say open, and that's imported. Actually, it's imported twice now for me. I'm going to delete the second one. So now I've got that parser class. Once I have a class module here, I can create variables of that type. So let's just go ahead and create a parser class to help us with this. I'm going to do that at the top of get one row, dim p as a new parser. So now I have an object of that type. It has properties and methods that I can manipulate. Now, the idea behind the text parser, there are two methods that we're going to be using today. One is called move to, and one is called get text. So imagine that I just had a notepad. I had some text open in Notepad. I just need to get some text here. So suppose I had, oh wow, I'm not sure what's quite going on here that I can't copy this, or why Control A isn't selecting. There we go. Okay, so I've just got some arbitrary text here. The idea behind the parser class is like, let's say I was looking for the word bot in here. So I would press Control F, make sure I'm at the top of the file. I'd press Control F, and I would search for bot. Find next. And it would take me to that location. And I could say, you know what? I want to find the next one, or I want to find the next one. So that's the first thing. We're going to see that you've got kind of a feature like that. We'll have the whole HTML text, and then we'll be able to move to a certain thing in it. And then there's a get text, which would allow you to say, all right, now let's suppose that I just have found this bot. And so you think of your insertion point as being right after that. Get text will let you get all the rest of the text until the next occurrence of a string of characters that you're looking for. So if that said end, I could say, I want to get everything from where I currently am, from my position, to where it says end, and it would bring back that set of characters. Let's see how to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and, now that I've got that declared as a new parser, I'm going to go ahead and run my code again to get to that page. And I might have to close Excel and start it up again. Oh, I still have export file open. That's why. Cancel. That was amazing. It let me import a file even though I was still in the middle of exporting. I wouldn't have expected that. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to go ahead and run. And that's brought me to the page that I'm after. I'm going to go ahead and look at the source of this. So I'll just right click and say inspect source, view page source. And that will show me the whole HTML source. So if you've done some work with HTML, this is probably pretty comfortable to you. If you haven't, this looks like a foreign language. But how am I going to be able to tell where the phone number is? In fact, if I was just looking at the page, and you've got to say, I got to find the phone number. How do you find the phone number? How can you tell what the phone number is on this page? Yeah, it says telephone right here, and you're going, it says telephone, and then you recognize, you look at that and you go, that looks like a phone number. So we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to look for the word telephone in this page. So I think I'll do that first, just looking at the source. Okay, so this is where telephone shows up. In fact, I might be a little safer looking for like telephone TD, or maybe even that closing angle bracket telephone TD. I might be worried if there could be a company that's like Telephone Brothers Trucking Service. So I don't want to just look for telephone by itself because I might find it somewhere else. But if I look for like this bracket telephone TD, I'm pretty comfortable I found that part of the page. And so that's going to be my first step. So I'm going to come here and say P, the name of my parser, and I'm going to set the position equal to 1. So that's going to be like, if you're looking at a text file, that's like putting the insertion point right at the very start of the file. I'm saying I want to start searching from the start of the file. Then I'm going to say P dot move to. You get my text that I want to move to. I'm not sure I copied it. So let me take this and copy it. P dot move to. And if that's successful, it will change the position to right after wherever it found this. So let me just go and run these two lines. F8, Shift F8, and Shift F8. And now let me ask what P dot position is. Still 1. Oh, I need to actually load. Right now there's nothing in my parser. So let's go ahead and put the text into my parser. So let's say P dot text equals, and now we've got to get the text that we're interested in. Well, we should be able to get just the body of this document. Everything that shows in the page is the body. The head of an HTML document has like some other directives, like what style sheets to use, if there's any JavaScript to bring in, is there stuff that we want search engines to know about, that goes in the head, but the body shows the document. So let me just go ahead and bring in the body. So right now, the page that I'm on is going to be bot. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do bot.find element by tag. And then the by tag. And then the tag that we're looking for is the body tag. And I'm going to ask for an attribute of that called the inner HTML. I've got a half-written line down here. Let me go ahead and comment that out. And so that has given me all of the HTML of the body. And so I'm going to put that into the text of my parser. So bot, find element by tag body. I want the inner HTML of the body. And that's everything that's showing in the document. So now let's run this again. Shift F8, because if I do F8 now, because this parser is defined in here as a class, if I do F8, it's going to step into and go through that line at a time. So Shift F8 will just, pardon me. Shift F8 will just run those lines without stepping through them. And now I should be able to look at bot.position. No, I'm sorry, p.position. So we set it to 1, then we moved to, and it found this 12,000 characters into the file. And so now the position is sitting right here, right after what it found. All right. So I've narrowed down what I'm looking for. How am I going to get to the actual telephone number? Well, I think I could do another move to here, and maybe what I should do, I'm uncomfortable looking for this opening parenthesis because I don't know that it's going to be standard formatting. Some of them might have hyphens and no parentheses and so forth. So I'm going to stick with this tag. I think what I'll do is I'm going to move to TD width, be the next place that I want to move to. So I'm going to find that, and then I'm going to move to TD width. And then I'm going to move to the closing tag. I'm not sure that it's always going to be 98%, but I'm sure there's going to be another closing tag right before I want that data. And so I'll just move to the closing tag. So right now I'm at 1238. I'm going to move to the TD width. That should advance me a little bit. Check my position. Advance me a little bit. This one should advance me just a tiny bit, just a few characters. I'll check my position here. Yeah, it advanced me 7 characters or so. But now I think my position is right before this. I think it's sitting right here. So now if I say get the text, in fact, if I get the text of this NBSP, that's a non-breaking space. That's going to be on every telephone number. Just what their data, it's just what their program is putting in there. So I'm going to search, I'm going to get the text up to that. So let me, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set the name of this function. What is this function doing? Oh no, we're going to write this to the row that we're on. So where do we want to write that? Telephone number is in column F on our current row. Okay, so we know the row, and our sheet is, looks like our sheet is just called sheet 1. And that's the name of it, the code name of it too. So let me just do this. Sheet 1 dot cells. The row got passed into here, row, column number F, dot value is going to be equal to p dot get text. So the get text method says wherever the position is, return all the text up to until it finds the string that I provide here, which is going to be ampersand NBSP semicolon. So I'm saying my insertion point is right here. It's right here. I want to get everything up to until it says ampersand NSB semicolon. And so I'm expecting that to put the phone number that it finds in that location. So it's just took the text there and returned that and put it right here into the worksheet. By the way, it also advanced the position to the end of what it just found. So position now has advanced, another 20 or so characters. So using like these methods, setting the position, or setting the text, setting the position, move to and get text allows us to do some pretty neat things with just working with any text file, but HTML files are pretty good too. I think that's it. You know, we could go ahead and get the fax number, but let's not worry about that. That's just repeating what we've done. So let me remove this stop and come and I'll just call get one on number 3. Let's see if that pulls in number 3. It's happening off screen. Oh, no, it didn't. Looks like I had no search results for that one. We probably want to add some error checking for that. So if we didn't find it, there was no results here. Let's just say exit function. Oh, it's a sub, exit sub. And maybe I'll just go ahead and make sure that I've got I never made a loop to actually run this. We'll just try another one. Let's try 4. Seems that it's running. Didn't like to get that page at all. Try it again. Looks like that time it was happy. Try 5. So of course, if we had a loop that was running those, it would just kind of run through those and get those one at a time. Okay, so this example now gives us what we need to be able to do the 6th and final project for this course. Any questions on this part? Yeah. Well, how do we close Chrome when we're done? And the answer is, as soon as that variable goes out of scope, it closes it. But because we've defined this here at the top, then it's not, it's in scope still. Do I still have it open? So we should be able to say, let me bring it over here. You should be able to say set bot equal to nothing. That should take that variable out of scope. Didn't do it. So let's see, where's WebDriver? I'm not entirely sure how to close it. Let's just see if we say bot dot, if it gives us any options. Oh, there's a bot dot close. Oh, and see, that didn't work earlier because it wasn't in scope. But if I run this, then that should get the next one and then close the browser. I'm pleased that it closed the browser. I'm not quite sure why it threw an error. It seems like it did close it. Yeah, we could put it on our resume next. That would work. So a little more work. We could track down exactly what the right way to do that is. But that gets us going. Let me try one more thing here. Let's try the thing I tried first, which was set bot equal to nothing. So that's closing it without error. Other questions? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right on that. I'm gonna say what I think you're in the process of saying, just so folks on the recording or on Zoom can hear it, and then tell me if this was right. So you're right. The process here is we're saying, listen, we want to bring in some text for our parser to work on. So we're saying, go find the body. In fact, I think I saw something that might have even been better. Bot. Let's come in here and say bot dot, yeah, page source. I've never tried page source. My guess is that would just bring in the whole page source without having to try to find the body and get this attribute. So I'm just going to leave that as a comment in here. So that's going to load up the text that we want to parse here into our parser. I'm setting my position equal to 1. It's going to start off at 1, but it's kind of nice in the code to see at this point, I know the position is at the very beginning of the file. This move to then says, go find the first occurrence of this text in the file. And it moves the position to that point. But I don't really want to be there. I want to be a little bit further, but I got to find something unique. And so from there, I'm going to move to where it says TD width. And then from there, I'm going to move to right where the closing bracket is. And that's going to get me right before the telephone number. That's what you're about to say? Oh, that's right. If we just said, look for this, it would find the first greater than sign, and that's not the one I'm after. So the subsequent move to says, from where you are, move to the next occurrence of this, move to the next occurrence of this. And then this is going to get everything from that occurrence up until it finds these characters. Okay. Other questions? All right, let's go ahead and close this one down then. Want to save? I do want to save. Okay, so our next one is going to be looking at using VBA with Google Sheets. Oh, I've got a half hour. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to get you started on this one. I don't think we're going to get through the full example. And I don't think we did it last semester either. Well, I'll see if I can find a good example I can point you to. But if you look 2 semesters back on the blog, I think you'll find an example of this actually working. So, so here's the high level view of what we're about to do. The idea is we're going to set up a Google form that's ready to receive input. And then we're going to use VBA to send information from our Excel worksheet to that Google form, which will put it onto a Google Sheet. And then we'll see how can we pull that data back down from the Google Sheet back into Excel. So essentially, we're going to be using Google Sheets as a repository for data, almost like a database, right? What we do with the database, push this to somewhere that everyone can access it. We're going to be doing that, but just using Google Sheets. It's kind of a nice way to kind of connect up what you're doing with Google Sheets and what you're doing with Excel. Okay, so, and the context for this is going to be actually our database example. I think I've got the one from last fall, but it was just the same. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up that file. And you may remember that what we did here was we did like logging. So every time the user changed a single cell, we were gonna record what that change was. Well, what I wanna do now is instead of recording it in this workbook or recording it in a database, I wanna actually put that up to Google Sheets. And it may be that that's really where I want the data to be in the first place, or it may be we're asking this repository to bring it down later. So we'll see how far we get on this example. Okay, so I'm going to come to Google Docs and make a Google form to put the information in. So Docs. Actually, I'm going to come to Drive to Google.com, and I guess I'll. Oh, yeah. So the question is, are we doing this with Chrome? And the answer is no. We're going to do this just with native tools in VBA. The truth is, we can do this with the web query wizard. And so the whole reason that we need Chrome is if we have to do something with a password protected website, or something where we're entering data into a form. Now we're going to be entering data into a form here. So there's some things we can do entering data into a form that don't require Google, but don't require that the Selenium. So let's just go ahead and take a look. So I guess I'm just going to go ahead and make a, where should I put this? I guess I'll put this in family, gov, work, ISD. Do I have one for 520? Oh, VBA. Oh, VBA form. I'll make a new VBA form. So I'm just gonna make a new folder to hold this stuff. Where you put this doesn't matter. Right? You can put this right in the root of your Google Drive, that would be fine. And I'm gonna call this use log. All right, now in here, I'm gonna make a new Google form. Untitled form. I'm going to call this Excel use log. And then I'm going to put several questions on here. I'm going to put a question on here for every piece of data that I want to hold. Now, if I come back to my code here in module 1, so here's record edit. And what were we doing? We were recording the username. So username, workbook, sheet name, the cell, and the value. Worksheet, address, value. I think we actually had the formula in the one that we did this year. Oh yeah, formula was here as well. Okay, so let's just go ahead and make those fields here. So question here, this is going to be username. Short answer, yeah, that's what we want, short answer. I'm going to copy it. Next one is going to be username workbook. Copy it, worksheet. Copy it, worksheet. Next one we need is the address. Copy that. And then we need the formula and the value. Okay, so this is just as if we were asking someone to enter this into Google Forms, and we're going to be having our little Excel program be the one that's doing the inserting. Now, there's a setting, this has kind of changed pretty recently. So it used to be that when you're working on a Google form, Google didn't know anything about what you typed in until you hit submit. But maybe just in the past year and a half or so, they've changed it so like as you're working along, it's saving what you're doing in the background. And that default way of saving things has made it a little bit more difficult to work with. But fortunately, we can undo that. I got to remember where it is. Settings applied to this and new forms. No, question defaults. You got to remember which setting it is. Is it here? So here, presentation. Here we go. Disable autosave for all respondents. That's what we want to do. Okay, so now we don't want to autosave. Thank you for helping me find that. So now it's just going to be kind of old style. It's going to hold all the values until we say submit at the end. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and preview this form. So what my task is going to be here is to be able to ultimately, I'm going to put information in all of these and I'm going to hit submit. And I want to be able to simulate the request that this form is making to the Google backend to be able to say, no, it's not coming from a Google Sheet. We're going to send this directly from Excel. So to do that, I got to find out what these things are called. So I'm just going to inspect it. Right click and inspect. Right, let me come up to my first one, username. Right click and inspect. So this is an input and it's got a name. JP, not entirely sure that's the name I'm after. We wouldn't really know until we're looking at it. Okay, we're gonna look at that information a little bit different way. So let me go ahead and right click and inspect again. And I'm gonna come here to the network tab. I'm gonna put these side by side. What the network tab allows me to see is the traffic that's actually being sent from my browser to whatever server I'm communicating with. So that was right click, I just right click, inspect, and then I chose the network tab. I'm going to go ahead and submit this form. And what we'll see is that here's the first thing that it sent, this form response. And come to headers. Just take a peek and see if what I'm expecting to see here I see. Host. Don't send it in a cookie. Ah, okay. We're going to try this approach isn't kind of stumbling here. This approach isn't what I'm after either. I think there's another way that we can do it. What we're going to do is we're going to come here and we're going to come to where it says get pre-filled link. When we get a pre-filled link, it's going to say, all right, the idea here is to build a link that you could give to someone that when they came to this, some of these things would already be filled in. And I think this is going to allow us to inspect to find the information that I'm after. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. So let me go ahead and close this. So let's look at this first one. I'm going to inspect the username right here where it says your answer. And now I am going to find where it says name. The name property of an input is how the server identifies that little piece of information. So it's called entry 88559630. No, it won't be the same. It'll be different for everyone. For sure, it will be different for everyone. So I'm going to copy that. Bring up Notepad. I'm just going to paste that here in Notepad for a moment. Ultimately, I'm going to have to get all of these, but I want to get it working with just the first one. And then we're going to code it and get them all. All right. Now let me come to where this goes when it submits. So I'm going to come back to my regular form. I'm going to preview that form again, and I'm just going to submit it. Because what I'm after is I'm after this URL that shows up here when I submit. All right, so when this form gets submitted, what happens is it's saying, hey, refer to this resource on the Google server, and it has information that it's passing, but we don't see that information. It's being passed in the body of the request instead of in the URL. But it's possible to send that information in the URL. And hopefully we're gonna make that happen right here. So I'm gonna copy that. This is gonna be different for you than it is for me. I'm gonna copy this. And I'm going to just bring this here into my Notepad as well. So the way that making a request to a server works is that it's possible to send the information I want to give to that server in the body, in which case it doesn't show in the URL. That's a post request. But with a GET request, I can put that information as a part of the URL. And you've seen it where there's like a question mark in the URL. And then it says some name. In this case, it's going to be entry that name, entry whatever that is. Wrap it a little bit more. And I'm going to say that equals then like the name of a worksheet. Now, if this works, if I just plug that URL into a browser, it's going to say, oh, we're going to this location and we're giving it a value that has this name, or we're giving a value, a name value pair that has this name and this value. What I'm thinking and hoping this will do is give me a submission to my form that has that as the workbook. I think it's supposed to be a workbook name. Anyway, it'll be a sheet name. It'll say sheet 1. Let's see if it happens. If this works, we will continue on. If not, we're going to cancel class and we're going to say, go watch the prior video. Okay, so good. It came here and it says my response has been recorded. I'd like to go see if that really is true. So I'm going to come back to my beginning of my form, come to responses, and I'm going to come to response 3. We come to individual responses and response 3, and there it is, sheet 1 and nothing else. So if I can properly format this URL with the names that I'm after, and you know, let's do at least 2. I'm going to get 2. So that was supposed to be the workbook. I don't think we're going to try to build the whole thing out, but let me go ahead and come back to where my, here's where I'm getting the link where it's actually showing me those names. Oh no, it was username and then workbook. So that first one is the username. The next one is the workbook. I'm going to see what that one is. I'm going to get its name. Once we've got 2 of these, there's a little difference between 1 and 2, but once we got the second one, you could do any number of them. So the question mark says everything after this in the URL is parameters that I'm sending to the server. The ampersand says here's another one. So my username is supposed to be like gov. Or actually, I think it's gallen2. And then my workbook name is going to be equal to workbook 1, workbook 1 dot XLSX. And then I could keep going with the other ones, but I at least want to get the example of this happening from VBA. Whew. Okay, does anybody want me to take you through how to get any part of this URL again? Okay, now that I have this URL, let me come back to my VBA code. Okay, so, and just, I think before I lose this, I'm going to paste it up here in my immediate window. I'll refer to that later. So here I've got record edit. Just go ahead and make another sub procedure. Sub push to Google Sheets. So let me dim URL as a string. And then URL equals that code. Now here's my workbook name. So let me just go ahead and put a parameter in here, like WB name. And then this is username, do the same thing here. So everything is going to be the same about this, except for those pieces of information that we're going to change in between making these requests. So now you just do a replace. And again, we're going to kind of put this in place, even though it won't be a fully blown example. URL equals replace, look at URL, look for username, replace it with whatever it is that we want to go in there. And of course, that could be, you know, any expression. Username, and then WB name is the other one. Book one. Okay, so now we're going to get this to make the request to Google Sheets. Now, there's a couple ways that we could do it. One is we could record ourselves making a web query, and we could just drop this URL into the web query, and that would make the request. That's something we already know a little bit about. Let's see if we can find, how many of you are actually doing this along with me? Got a few, oh, most of you here in class, good. Okay, the other approach is that we can go and actually use objects that are meant just for making a bare request to a web server. And there are a lot of examples online for that we could just bring in and paste. Which approach do you want to do? The way that we're comfortable with, or see some new objects? Who says see some new objects? Who says let's do what we're comfortable with? It's like a tie, 1 against 1, and the rest are all whatever, professor, let's just go. We got like, 14 minutes before class is over. Let me go ahead and introduce you to some new objects. So we'll have to find these. So I'm going to look for VBA, XML, HTTP without references. That's a good one. VBA, XML, HTTP without references. So these objects, we can say, oh, you know what, we want to go and use these objects. We can go find the reference and use them, but we can just go get them directly from the operating system. So let's see what this tells us on Stack Overflow. So I'm just going to the first one from that, accept all cookies. That's not a very good answer. This one is not quite it either. Let's go back. We'll use this one. So if you do a Google search of just that, XML HTTP is the hard one there. VBA XML HTTP without references. And let me just look at one more. That second one will work for us. Let me see if this one looks good. No, this one is using references too. Okay, let's go back to the second one. Oh, actually, no, this is it. So I'm going to take this block here that says create object, MSXML2 right here. So this is the object that we need. No, I don't want any notifications. Okay, so I'm just going to come here and paste that code in here. This is going to give me an object. By the way, this is the syntax that says, hey, this is what this object is known as inside of Windows. So we're just going to create that. We don't need to have a reference to it. We can just create it. So that's going to give me the object that it takes to make a request to a web server. Let me come back and see then where we're using it. So where it says make request, I'm going to copy, I'm going to copy these last 3 lines here. And this is kind of interesting, this example, just to let you know you're not alone in struggling with when to put parentheses. What's the rule about when you use parentheses? If you're doing something with the value that comes back. In this case, we're not doing anything with the value that comes back, and yet the example has parentheses around it, which it shouldn't have. Because it's only a single value, it still works that way, but whoever wrote this example was a little unclear on that. I don't want a message box, I just want debug.print. Okay. So here we've created the object. Here we're going to open a request. We haven't, at this point, this line isn't going to talk to the server. This is getting ready to talk to the server. And so the first argument here is what is the protocol or what is the method that we're using to talk? It can be get, post, put, delete, patch. I think those are the 5 legal ones here. The vast majority of requests on the internet are get. The next most common is post, but get is what we want here. Here's the URL. Her variable is called my URL. Ours is just going to be URL. And this last argument here says, should we wait until the page comes back before we move on? I'm sorry. It means, should this be a background query? Background query is don't wait. So false here means wait until the page comes back before moving on. The send then sends that request to the server. And because we said false here, it's going to wait until that page is back before it moves on. And the response text is going to be what the server sent back. So what we're about to do is we're about to make the request to the Google form, properly formatted with the data that we want to send to it. We are then going to make that request and then wait till it comes back and print whatever that server sent us back. So we should get some HTML back, and it should look familiar because that HTML is pretty simple HTML, right? This is what it is. So let me go ahead and give it. I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. Go ahead and run that, and it came back pretty quickly. Let's see if we can see something about your response has been recorded. There it is. So I think we just pushed that into that table. Where do we see the form responses? I got 4 responses. I'll go to the 4th one, and there's G. Allen in book 1. So it's not especially pretty, but that lets me just reach out, make a request to a web server, and get the response back. One more thing, and let me just check to see if we've got this. So here's one other problem, and that is in a URL, there are certain characters that have special meaning. For example, the ampersand character says, hey, this is the separator between name value pairs. So what do you think? Could I have an ampersand as part of my value? And the answer is no, it's got to be encoded to be able to do that. So kind of the final step here is to say, I need to be able to properly encode any information that I'm going to put into this URL. So one more web search and we should be there. So let's look for VBA URL encode. Here's the question, how can I URL encode a string in VBA? Let's see, Stack Overflow should be pretty good. Public function encode. Yeah, I like this one. So let me go ahead and let's go ahead and do that search again so you can find that those are following along. VBA URL encode, and then I'm looking at the first response. And I'm going to just copy this function out. And then I'm going to upvote this person. Oh, I have to log in first. I'm not going to upvote that person. So let me go ahead and just paste that in here. And this is what this is going to do is say, listen, whatever you pass into this, it knows what a URL is allowed to have, and it will properly encode everything so that it comes back okay. We'll just have a test call to this URL encode. This, oops, is a quote. This is my string and stuff. And so it says, hey, listen, spaces are not allowed. So they're encoded as %20. The and is encoded as a %26. Any idea what the ASCII value of an ampersand is? Any guess? 26. What's the ASCII value of a space? Yeah, 20. ASCII value of a space is, oh no, it's 32. Never mind. Oh, it's not the numeric ASCII value, it's the hex. It's the ASCII value in hex. So that's a space, but it's not decimal, it's hexadecimal. Okay, so what that means is that now that will be properly encoded. So when I'm doing my replacing, instead of replacing it with just that, let me wrap that around a URL encode. And that way, if I have spaces or other characters in it, it will URL encode that as it sends it to the server. But when the server gets it, it goes, oh, this was encoded, and it spins it back to what the real data is, and it will put in just what we sent here. So that will now be, yeah, it'll be that, even though it's got spaces and such in it. So I'll go ahead and run this again. Got my response back. Look at my data and put it in properly. Okay, so that's kind of a couple of new things here, just kind of working with the server, but doing the URL encode, being able to create an object that doesn't require me to use any references. This is the approach for that. Then here, just sending and receiving a request. If I wanted to pull this data back into Excel, I can do that with a web query as soon as I publish the data. So if I make a sheet for this, create a new sheet, that looks great. Once I have that sheet, I can say File, Publish to the web. File. They've moved where it said publish. Say publish now. Move. Rename. Is it under share? Publish to the web. They moved it. That's fine. Share. Publish to the web. And then I'll just say form response 1. Publish. And now that's a URL that I could just consume with a web query, and it would pull that data back into Excel. If I'm trying to put data there and I don't want it to be publicly available to someone who happens to get the URL, well, I could do something to encode that data so that what I'm actually putting to the form is encoded. So even if they could get it without the key, they can't decode it. So anyway, that's we're kind of working with Google Sheets. Questions? All right, thanks for coming. Database projects due tonight. Good luck with that. I think the TAs probably have scheduled hours. They know to schedule hours for tonight. We'll see you then. Class dismissed.